Hi, everybody. I'm Mrs. Correas. I hope you're enjoying the lemonade board so far. I will be reading to you Chapter 4 Partnership. Partnership. Two or more people pooling their money, skills, and resources to run a business, agreeing to share the profits and losses of that business. Jesse had been waiting for this moment, the moment when Evan would see their lemonade stand, see the wonderful decorations they had made, see the crowds of people waiting in line, see Megan Moriarty standing by her side. He would see it all and be so impressed. He would think to himself, wow, Jessie is one cool kid. She sure knows how to run a lemonade stand right. And then he'd jog over and say, hey, can I help out? And Jessie would say, sure. We were hoping you'd come over. And it would be like old times. Why hadn't it worked out like that? With one part of her brain, Jessie continued to take money from customers and make change. That was the part of her brain that worked just fine. With the other part of her brain, Jessie went over what had happened with Evan. That was the part of her brain that tended to run in circles. She and Megan were selling lemonade. Business had been good. Then Mrs. Polly, a neighborhood mom, walked up. She had a bunch of kids in her backyard running through the sprinkler, and now they wanted 12 cups of lemonade. 12! It was the biggest sale of the day. Megan got cracking, pouring the lemonade, and Jessie took the 6 singles that Mrs. Polly handed her. All the kids from Mrs. Polly's backyard were chanting, lemonade, lemonade, lemonade. A fly buzzed by Jessie's ear. They'd been having a problem with flies because of the sticky lemonade spills on their stand, and she cocked her head to one side to shoo it since her hands were busy with the money. And that's when Jessie looked up and saw Evan standing there staring. So she smiled, but he didn't smile back. So she waved, even though she had all that money in both hands. She waved so he'd know that she was happy to see him. And then he stalked off, all stiff-legged and bristly. And she never got to say, sure, we were hoping you'd come over, like she'd rehearsed in her head. And just then, Tommy Polly, who was 2 years old, pulled down his bathing suit and peed right on the lawn. And Megan laughed so loud, Jessie was sure you could hear it all over the neighborhood. That's what had happened. That's exactly what had happened. But Jessie knew that something else entirely had happened, and she didn't get it. The way she didn't get a lot of things about people. All she knew was that sight of Evan walking away from her for the second time that day made her feel so sad and alone that she just wanted to run home to her room and curl up on her bed with Charlotte's Web. Hey, Madam Cashier, said Megan, nudging her. You're falling behind. Ring 3 for this lady and 1 for this kid here. Jessie turned away from the retreating figure of Evan. That's $1.50, she said to the woman standing in front of her. She took the $5 bill the woman was holding out and made change from her lockbox, focusing all her energy on the part of her brain that worked just fine. It's true that when Evan had first walked out of the garage, Jessie had banged up to her room and tried to think of every possible way that she could make his life a living misery. She'd thought of telling Mom that Evan was the one who broke the toaster by playing hockey in the house, which is not allowed. She thought of taking back every one of her CDs from his room, even though she knew that would mean she'd have to give back all of his CDs. She'd even thought of putting peanut butter in his shoes. This was something she'd read in a book, and she loved to imagine that moment of horror when he'd think he somehow gotten dog dew inside his shoes. But when these ideas finished bouncing around her brain, and when her breathing had returned to normal, and her fists weren't clenched at her sides anymore, she knew that what she really wanted was to get the old Evan back, the one who was so much fun to be around, the one who helped her out of every jam. Like when she ate all the Lorna Doones that Mom had set aside for the Girl Scout meeting, and Evan had ridden his bike to the 7-Eleven and bought a new package before Mom even noticed. Or when she accidentally, well, not accidentally, but how was she supposed to know, picked the red flowers in Grandma's garden that were a hybrid experiment. Evan said they'd both done it so that Grandma's disappointment was spread around. Or the time that Jessie had smashed the ceramic heart that Daddy had given her because she was so mad that he had left them. And then When she had cried about her broken heart, Evan had glued every single last piece back together again. She wanted back the Evan who was her best friend. But Evan didn't want her because he thought she was a baby and she was going to embarrass him in Mrs. Overton's class. So she had to prove to him that she was a big kid, that she could keep up with the crowd, that she could fit in even with his fourth grade class. I'll show him I can sell lemonade too, just as good as him and Scott. I won't embarrass him. So Jessie got down to business. She knew she needed a partner. From past experience, she learned that having a lemonade stand alone wasn't considered cool. It was considered pathetic. And her partner would have to be a fourth grade girl because that's what this was all about, showing she could fit in with the fourth graders. So the question was, who? It had to be a girl who lived in the neighborhood, or at least close enough to bike to her house. And it had to be someone that Jessie had talked to at least once. No way could she call up a girl she'd never even talked to. And it had to be someone who seemed nice. This last part was a problem because Jessie knew that she often thought people were nice and then they turned out to be not nice. Case in point, those second grade girls. So Jessie decided it had to be someone who Evan thought was nice. Evan knew about these things. He was the one who had explained, with his big arm around her shoulder, Jessie, those girls are making fun of you. They are not nice. When Jessie thought about all these different requirements, there was only one obvious answer: Megan Moriarty. She lived less than 3 blocks down the street. Jessie said hi to her a few times while biking in the neighborhood. And Evan must have thought she was nice because Jessie found a piece of paper in his trash can with Megan's name written all over it. Why would he cover a page with her name if he didn't think she was a nice person? Jessie went to the kitchen and climbed onto a stool so that she could reach the cabinet over the stove. She took down the school phone book and looked through the listings for both of last year's third grade classes. No Megan Moriarty. Duh, Jessie remembered. She moved in halfway through the school year. With a sinking heart, Jessie checked the town phone book. No Moriarty family listed on the Damon Road. Okay, said Jessie, slapping the book down shut and putting it back in the cabinet over the stove. Time for plan B. Jessie went to the hall closet and got out her backpack, which had been hanging there empty since the last day of school. Inside, she put 3 cans of frozen lemonade from the freezer and her lockbox full of change. She put the $10 bill, still paper clipped to last year's birthday card, from her grandmother in her top desk drawer. Then she went to the garage, strapped on her helmet, and rode off on her bike. As she left the driveway, she could see Evan and Scott's lemonade stand on the corner, but she was careful not to make eye contact. She didn't want to talk to Evan until she was ready to. Ta-da! Impress him. Her heart leaped when she imagined him ditching Scott to be with her. Megan's house was so close that Jessie got there in less than 30 seconds. And less than 30 seconds wasn't nearly long enough for her to plan what she was going to say. So she rode back and forth in front of her house about 15 times trying to pick the right words. What are you doing? A voice shouted from the upstairs window. Jessie slammed on her foot brakes and looked up. Megan was staring down at her. She looked huge. Her voice did not sound nice. Riding my bike, said Jessie. But why are you riding back and forth? Asked Megan impatiently, in front of my house. I don't know, said Jessie. You want to play? Who are you? Asked Megan. Jessie, said Jessie, pointing down the street toward her house. Evan's little sister? Asked Megan. Jessie felt like a deflating balloon. Yeah. Oh, said Megan. I couldn't tell because of the helmet. Jessie took her helmet off. So you wanna? She asked. There was a long pause. Where's Evan? Asked Megan. He's out somewhere with a friend, said Jessie. Oh, said Megan. Jessie looked down at the ground. People tell you things? Evan had told her once with their hands and their faces and the way they stand. It's not just what they say. You gotta pay attention, Jess. You gotta watch for the things they're saying, not with their words. Jessie looked back up. It was hard to see Megan at all. She was so far up and behind the window screen. Jessie sucked in her breath. Do you want to do something? Another long pause. Jessie started counting in her head.